Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are making kind of a breakfast for lunch today. We have our hot cross buns that have been rising in the oven. We made the dough earlier and now we're going to make the little crosses for them. So we're going to start out by mixing a 1/3 cup of flour with some sugar, about a 1/4 cup of sugar, and just enough water to make it a paste. There we go. So I'm going to start with a little bit and we're going to mix it. And we're going to paste on little crosses onto our hot cross buns. And then when we bake, they kind of sink into the bun. And then we'll also do a frosting cross on the end because everybody loves frosting. So you just add enough water to make a nice paste. It's around a tablespoon or two. You don't want to have too much because you don't want it to be too runny. But you want to be able to squeeze it out of a little baggie. There we go. And you want to make sure you add a good amount of sugar to it because you want it to have a nice little sweet taste. Here we go. I think this is about a good consistency. And I just want to make sure you mix it up well. So we have it kind of where it's like thick, and we're going to pipe on our little crosses on our hot cross buns before we pop them in the oven. So I'm just going to be using a little Ziploc baggie, and I'm going to just scoop in my mixture here, and then we'll cut the end and pipe it on. Now, if you want to get extra bougie, you could get out a piping bag, but I find a Ziploc baggie does great, and you don't have to waste a piping bag or get special materials. Slide this over here. Let me get a pair of scissors. And you're essentially just work it all down into one corner. We're going to give it a little twist. And then we're going to cut the tip of our bag. And now what we're going to do is we're going to pipe our little crosses on there for our hot cross buns. And these have raisins in it, cinnamon, ginger, allspice, a little bit of sugar. And so they're just like a lightly sweetened, soft roll. And then we'll glaze them with a little bit of powdered sugar later and make a little frosting because, of course, I always love mine with frosting on them. Here we go. You could also make the dough with currants if you wanted to instead of raisins. But I feel like in the United States, raisins are very common in hot cross buns. There we go. So we've got our crosses on here. Now we are going to pop these in the oven at 400 for about 18 minutes. They take between 15 and 20 minutes depending on how your oven cooks. So my oven is preheated to 400. I'm going to slide those in, and I'm going to set my timer. Let's do 18 minutes, and then hopefully that will get them done. Just depends. If your oven cooks faster, 15. If you have an oven that cooks a little bit slower, do it 20. But I always like to cut it in the middle of the recommended times, and that way you don't over bake them, or because you can always bake it more, but you can't stop the baking. Okay, we're gonna have some lovely skillet potatoes with our hot cross buns and some fried eggs. Like I said, we're having kind of, we did like a quick breakfast this morning. We're out doing stuff, and so now we're kind of having a nicer kind of, more homey breakfast for lunch. So we're gonna start out. I'm going to use 1/2 pound of bacon, and I'm going to cut this into some small pieces here because we're going to toast these up and make them nice and crispy for our skillet potatoes. Here we go. Cut it off. You don't want to have your bacon pieces be too big. I am using nice thick bacon, which will crisp up nicely. So we're going to toss these in. And then I have a couple I'm going to see they're still kind of frozen, but I'm going to try to chop them up. A little bit of sausage as well. So it will be like bacon and sausage, and we're going to crisp these up in there. There we go. Such a nice day. You know, we had a kind of a cold spell earlier in the week. Yesterday, like when we woke up, it was like 38 degrees. It was cold. But now the sun has come out. It's in the mid 60s. The kids are outside playing. I think they found some chalk and are enjoying the nice warm weather. Here we go. So we're going to add those in just a second. So I'll put these back up in my little bowl here. I want my bacon to crisp up first to start going before I add the sausages in. Now flip this over and I'm going to go give my knife a little wash. Okay. And then we're going to mince up some onions. We're going to slice up our potatoes and get everything ready for our skillet potatoes. Okay, so I don't need a whole lot of onion, so I'm just going to slice off. I am using some red onion because I had part of one in my fridge, and I just decided I need to use it in a lot of pop of color. We're also going to use some leftover green onions. I always like to try to use up what we have before I either open up something new or cut into something new. Especially at the end of the week, you know, you want to kind of get everything out before we do our restock with our groceries. So I'm going to cut them all a little bit smaller now and kind of mince over them because I don't want super huge onion pieces in my skillet potatoes. There we go. But the red onions, I typically prefer yellow onions for skillet potatoes, but red onions are nice because they're not quite as astringent as like a white onion. And so they'll cook up nicely, add a mild onion flavor to it. There we go. And then we'll save our green onions for it. Let me stir my bacon up. Now that it's got a nice, you want to make sure it like kind of cooks out all the fat because we're going to cook the potatoes in that. Here we go. Just breaking them apart with my tongs. We'll get these going. Okay, we've got our onions up, and so now we're going to dice up our potatoes, and you want to dice up your potatoes fairly small. So I'm actually going to cut off the ends, and we're going to just do a minor kind of peel, not completely, just taking off some of the skins. I don't mind, you know, some potato skins on my skillet potatoes, but I like to take off a little bit. It just gives them a nicer texture overall. So I'm leaving some on, and we're just going to slice these up. You want them to be fairly small so that they'll cook up fairly quickly, but yet remain crispy on the outside. You know, it's a lot harder if you cut them really big for them to get soft and tender on the inside while remaining crispy on the outside. A lot of times they can burn. So we're aiming for a piece about that size. And the trick is to try to keep your potatoes all within the same kind of ballpark size. You don't want to have any super huge ones because those won't cook up, and then you'll have a crunchy potato versus a nice tender with a crispy outside. There we go. And I'm using russet potatoes. You can also, I feel like for skillet potatoes, most potatoes work great for it. It's not like mashed potatoes where they have, or soups where they have a distinctive difference. Skillet potatoes, I think they all fry up nicely and crisp up versus, you know, in soups, you really want to stick with like a gold potato or a yellow potato over a russet because they'll dissolve. With skillet potatoes, you don't have so much of that issue. Let me give our bacon a little stir here. And I want to cook my bacon until they have just a little, starting to get a bit more crispy in this. I want them all to kind of look like that versus the paleness, because once we start adding in the sausage and other things, the bacon won't crisp up anymore. It's kind of like onions and caramelizing. Once you start to crowd the pan, you lose the heat that is needed for crisping them up. And do a quick kind of over here. Now, if you love the skins, you can keep them on. This is more to appease my children. They're not as much of a skin fan. They'll tolerate small amounts, but get too much, and then they're like, ew. There. Okay. And going through, cube these up. Let's give our bacon a little toss. I'm going to turn my skillet down to about a 6. There we go. Starting to get a good kind of crisping on it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my bacon over to this side so it can continue to crisp. And I'm going to put my sausage chunks over here. We're going to let those fry up. And that was frozen sausage that I used. So it will take a little minute to kind of cook up. But I always like to have like a big pack of frozen sausage in my freezer because it's just a quick and easy thing to pull out for a quick brunch. That, you know, there's always like certain staples that I have in my house that I can whip together, like pretty much any of my like tried and true recipes for the family. You know, because as you guys know, I do not meal plan. I kind of wing it. And so I kind of always look, I'm like, what do I have? What can I make with it? What produce needs to get used up? And that kind of was what dictates what I'm making for dinner or whatnot. Here we go. So we've got all of our potatoes cubed up here. Give our sausage a little stir now. Okay. I'm going to toss these in. Now we're going to put our onions in. Give them a little bit to kind of caramelize up a little with the bacon grease. You want to cook them a little bit before you add the potatoes in because you do want them a chance to get some of that kind of caramelization on it. Okay. Got them coating right there. Now, while that is cooking there, we are going to got to make 2 things. We got to make our glaze for the top of our hot cross buns, and then we have to make the frosting for our hot top buns. So let me grab my powdered sugar here and let's do a spoon and a fork because I always find the forks help kind of mush it together. So when they come out of the oven, we are going to just lightly brush them with a simple mixture of powdered sugar and water. So kind of a really light glaze that will go on clear, but will give the rolls, which are not an overly sweet roll, they have a little bit of sweetness, but it will give them just a nice, lovely extra, kick of sweetness. So you need about 1/4 cup of powdered sugar. You don't need too much. And then you're going to mix in enough warm water to where you have a very runny and kind of clear glaze. So you don't want anything super thick. There we go. So it was about, I want to say, maybe 2 tablespoons of water. And we're going to mix it up. And this way, you want to get all there. It's just a nice little sweet brushing over. So we've got that. Let's check on our potatoes and onions right here. Or sausage and onions and bacon. And now we're going to throw in our potatoes real quick so we can start frying them up. And because we cut them fairly small, the potatoes don't need too long to cook. The smaller you cut them, the larger or the faster they'll cook. And this is going to be for our skillet breakfast, which we'll be having some fried eggs with them, as well as our hot cross buns that are baking in the oven. I decided this week I'm going to do my traditional hot cross buns, which are these, but I've been really into sourdough recently. So I'm going to make a sourdough hot cross buns, and I'm going to see which ones everyone likes better because they'll be slightly different, but I'm excited to kind of try them out. I'm just making sure I coat all of these potatoes in that bacon grease. There we go. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to smush them down flat. I'm going to turn my heat up to a medium high, around a 7. And we're going to let them sit and crisp up. We're going to add some spices, but we won't add those until the very end because we don't want them to burn and stick to the bottom of the tray. So now let's make our frosting. In here, I have 4 tablespoons of melted butter. And then we're going to add some cream and powdered sugar, and we're going to make a nice frosting that we can pipe on a little cross on top of our hot cross buns. So I'm going to start with about a 1/2 cup of powdered sugar. And we're going to mix this together, and then we're going to add in some cream to get it to the right consistency that we like. If you could add a touch of vanilla in if you want, but I find that the butter and cream and powdered sugar is great on its own. Okay. Give it a good mix. We're going to add a little bit more powdered sugar, maybe about 1/4 cup more, because I don't want my frosting to be too buttery. There we go. And now what we'll do is once we have the butter mixed in, we're going to add a little bit of cream to kind of thin it out. And this will be so lovely on top of the hot cross buns, because if you've never had a hot cross buns before, we're going to add about 1 tablespoon of cream. They're not super sweet, but they have a nice mild sweetness, and the glaze and the frosting gives you a bit more, but they have a lovely, they have cinnamon, ginger, and allspice, so they have some nice spicy undertones, that kind of, just give you that nice homey, delicious feeling. Some people I know will also put orange peel in their hot cross buns, but I like mine to be just more raisins and the cinnamon. Give it a good mix here. I'm gonna add a bit more powdered sugar because I'm trying to get my nice creamy things. I always go by how it looks versus the exact ingredients amount. So I'm trying to look for a nice kind of smooth yet creamy frosting that I can pipe on. There we go. So we've got a nice thick but able to drop. This will be perfect for piping on. Let's check out our potatoes. Let's give these a nice fold over. And just kind of fold them over. I've got a couple that escaped out of here. There we go. We'll cook up our eggs in just a second, but I want to wait till the very closer to the end to cook up the eggs, because once you cook the eggs, they don't last long before you serve them. So we'll cook those up right towards the very end. There we go. Spread these out. We're going to chop up our green onions right now. We're going to add our green onions on towards in a little bit. I'm going to add on the white parts of the green onions first, and then the other ones I'm going to add on. We used part of this green onion yesterday when we were making our bagels, and I never like to have things go to waste. So we're going to put these will go great in our skillet potatoes. So I'm going to put the whiter parts in now, and then we'll leave the rest kind of garnish at the end, keep them fresh. But I find that the lighter stem parts of the green onions definitely need to be cooked up a little bit sooner than the top part. And then I forgot to set it out. I'm going to grab my parsley. We're going to mince up some parsley for our potatoes as well. And it looks like we have about 2 minutes left on our, that's cilantro. Here's my parsley on our hot cross buns. I always find that parsley lightens up the fried potatoes a little bit, and it also adds a nice, lovely pop of color. You could throw in some peppers in here as well. And if you like mushrooms, they would go great in here.
Yeah, question, where can they find the recipes for all?
So we always upload the videos on the link on our page, and so they can always get it. And then as I have time, I make recipe cards. But I'm pretty busy with our 5 kids and our sports, so my recipe cards don't get out as quickly as I'd like. But we always do upload our videos, so you could always go back and remake them. And we recorded the beginning process for our hot cross buns, so we're going to make that into a full video if you want to make those as well, because it's one of those things where hot cross buns, kind of like cinnamon rolls, you can't do it all in 1 hour. There's a lot of resting time needed for the rise, and so that's kind of something that lends itself, instead of like a live stream, to a jump cut type video. There we go. We're going to just mince these up really nicely. This is about a tablespoon of fresh parsley. Here we go. And again, I like to add all of my spices for our potatoes towards the end, because I have found that if you add them in the beginning, what happens is they sink down to the bottom and then they kind of burn on the bottom of your skillet and your potatoes don't retain them. But if you wait till the end, all of that flavor will be there. And we're going to be using some onion powder, Mrs. Dash's table blend, garlic salt, surprise, surprise, and a little black pepper, plus some green onions and our fresh parsley for our seasonings for our potatoes. Okay, we've got these. I'm going to mince up our green onions, and then we're going to put our frosting in our Ziploc baggie so that when the hot cross buns are ready, well, I say that and they start beeping, we'll do that when I pull them out. Let's go check on them. I hear ya. I'm going to grab my trivet. Beautiful. Look at these. Pull them out. They've got nice kind of golden tops to them. Turn off my oven here. And you can see that flour and sugar mixture, it sinks down into the bun as we make, as it bakes. So we've got our hot cross buns right there. And now what we're going to do is, with our glaze that we made first, we're going to glaze them. So this was just sugar, powdered sugar, and water. And we're going to brush it over the top of them. This is going to give our hot cross buns a nice shiny kind of color to it and a little bit of sweetness. There we go. And this is, I will always say, this is important because hot cross buns in and of themselves are not overly sweet. There we go. And I'm just going to go back through it all again. And you want to do it right when they're right out of the oven, so that it soaks into it and makes a nice little kind of crunchy topping on the top. There we go. Now let's go flip our potatoes, and we'll start our eggs, and then we'll start piping our frosting on. Nice, we're getting this lovely golden brown crispy edges on our potatoes, which is what we want. Just making sure I flip all of them over. And then we're going to spread them out. I'm going to turn it down just a teensy bit. Okay. And then let's get in our skillet over here. We're going to get a little butter, and we're going to start melting it for our fried eggs. So I'm going to use about half a tablespoon of butter. We're going to turn our skillet on to about a 6 out of 7. I don't want it on a full high. I want it on a medium high, because you don't want to cook your fried eggs too much. And then let's scoop our frosting into our Ziploc baggie, which we will paste or like pipe our little crosses on top of the ones that we already made. And this will just add a nice little extra sweetness to the hot cross buns. A lot of times I know when you buy hot cross buns from a bakery, they'll even give you a little tub of frosting to have on the side. Because a lot of people like, you know, like their frosting on them. Okay. There we go. And we're going to put it in our bag. We're not going to pipe them yet. We want them to cool for a second. Let's get our egg. You got a comment that your family's spoiled. You know, I like to think so. My children sometimes don't. They're always like, oh, can't we get Chipotle? Can't we get this and this? And I'm like, I can make Chipotle at home. It'll taste better. It will be cost a lot less. But you know, they always, I will say, I think they appreciate it. They always miss it when they don't get my home cooking, if they're like gone or at camp or whatnot, or they're always like, oh, can you make this and that? You know, and I always say, we do, like on Friday, we had a late soccer game. So we ordered pizza so that when we got home from the soccer game at like 8:45 at night, we had pizza waiting for us, you know. But I always just find, I'm like, I grew up always eating home cooked meals, and like going out to eat or takeout was like a special treat. And I want my kids to realize that too, because to be honest, it's not affordable to go out and to eat out at a restaurant all the time or to get fast food all the time, nor is it like healthy for our bodies. I try to minimize the amount of processed foods the kids eat, because I mean, there's just so much of it out there, and you can make things at home, you know, tastes so much better. Okay, we've got our butter melted here. I'm just going to move it all the way around. I'm going to turn my skillet down, and we're going to do some fried eggs today. So again, wish me luck. Fried eggs are one of those things that I either do great with them or I crack them all when I'm trying to do the over easy part, because I like my fried eggs over easy, which is where you cook them and then you flip them over and you fry them on the other side. And it's that transfer, that flip over. You got to be very delicate with them in order for them to turn out. Let's see, we can get one more in here. Perfect. And I'll leave my last one because Teddy does not like fried eggs. And every time I give him a fried egg, he is like, no, scramble it. The other day, he literally took the egg, the fried egg, and put it back on my skillet. And he was like, scrambled it. So I just chopped it up in little pieces, and I was like, it's scrambled. And he ate it just fine. Okay, we're going to use some onion powder. So I've got my green onions, my parsley. We're going to sprinkle over about a teaspoon of onion powder on here. Then we're going to use some Mrs. Dash's table blend. Don't want that. I want the sprinkle. We're going to sprinkle again about a teaspoon over the top. And then, of course, garlic salt, my favorite. About a teaspoon of this. This is where most of the saltiness for our potatoes are going to come from. That and the bacon. And a little bit of black pepper. I would say about a half a teaspoon or a fourth, you know, just a little bit to give it a nice little oomph, but not too much. We're going to let them sit for a second because I like to wait to the last minute to stir them in. But my eggs over here, we're going to sprinkle a little bit of salt over them. And that way, because I always like to salt mine up before. And then let me feel how the tops of these are feeling. You know what? They're cool enough for me to pipe on. If you pipe on your frosting too soon, it will melt right off. So here is our frosting. I'm going to slide these in. Pan's not too hot anymore. Let me just move this out of the way. So we made this. This is our butter, powdered sugar, and a little bit of cream. We're going to cut the tip off just like we did with the original things. And then I'm just going to go over that each cross with a little bit of frosting. I guess they were a little hot, but no worries. Try to pipe them quickly. And you always can save some extra for dipping on it. But it's pretty easy once you do it. I will say it's easier to pipe it on than it is to try to spread it, but they are melting fast. I guess they were hotter than I thought, but you know what? I have extra, so when they cool down, I'll repipe them and they'll just be even better. Okay, we are almost done here, so let me stir up these potatoes with all of our good seasonings in it. Look at that nice golden crust on those bottom ones. The trick with our potatoes is you got to let them sit between stirring. You can't constantly stir them or they won't crisp up nicely. Perfect. They are beautiful. You can tell they're soft and tender with the nice crispy edges. I'm going to turn them down. And now here, guys, this is the moment of truth. I always break them. And I know you could put the lid on and steam them and they would be fine, but I love them over easy. So I'm going to turn my stove down nice and low because you don't want to have them too high. You want to make sure you cut them all before you try your flip. It's funny, whenever my mom's here for brunch, I'm always like, Mom, will you fry up the eggs? Because I never do a good job. Okay, we've got 6 eggs here, guys. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I counted. Now you turn it off. Once you flip them, you want to turn it off right away or move it from heat because they'll cook cooking. And now it is time to serve up our breakfast. So we have our delicious skillet potatoes.
You got a celebratory. You did it.
I did it. I know. You know what? It's the multitasking. I really can't do it. Okay, we've got our skillet fried potatoes. And now what I like to do, we're going to take our egg, flip it over, and then you want to split it apart to let that yolk run down on there. And then we are going to serve it with a nice, beautiful hot cross bun. And guess what? We'll pipe one more little cross on it as it slides away. This is our skillet potatoes with bacon, sausage, fried eggs, and our homemade hot cross buns with raisins and nice glaze and frosting. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. I like to show you what we're cooking, what we're feeding our family. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and feel free to comment or message with any cooking questions. Thanks again.